Thank you to all my channel members, including my fan appreciation level members and my contributor level members, for helping support the YouTube channel. Hello, and welcome to my channel. My name is Jonathan Cohn, and today I have my book review of the book, The Poisoned Crown, by Maurice Druon. This is the third book in the Accursed Kings series. I read the first book 2 months ago, The Iron King, and I absolutely loved it. Absolutely loved it. And I read The Strangled Queen last month, and I absolutely loved this book. And guess what? I read The Poisoned Crown, the third book, and I absolutely loved it. It's 3 for 3. Solid, amazing, fantastic books. Each of these books has almost been book of the month, the first two. And so far, as I'm recording this is so far the best book that I've read this month. But, it might be topped. We'll see. But I absolutely loved The Poisoned Crown. This series is about the French monarchy during the 1300s. The first book was about Philip the Fair, also known as the Iron King, and his rule. And it's about, the end of his reign. Book 2 is about, and it's all historical fiction, so I'm not spoiling too much, but we'll talk about it. And then book 2 is about his son Louis X coming to the throne, and there was scandal about his family, and this book's about him basically being like, look, I got to get rid of this wife because of problems that happened, and I can't get remarried until she's dead. So The Strangled Queen. You can if you haven't read, you know what happens. Then you have the third book, The Poisoned Crown, which again is like a metaphor. This one is a metaphor for the monarchy at the time, but it's also a little bit accurate in its literalness. So his titles make total sense when you read them. But this book is very much like the others, really fast to read. I read it in a whole single day, like I did the other two books. And Maurice Druon just gets how to write these books that just enrapture you. They're interesting. There's no action in these books. There's no battles or anything happening, or sword fights or anything. It's just political intrigue and stuff happening to our main characters, making them have to deal with difficult things. There's 3 main plot lines here. All 3 of them are great. But I'm going to go through and start with my favorite one and go on down. My favorite plot line was essentially one of the B plots of the book, and that is about Guccio, who is a young banker. His uncle is Ptolemy, and Ptolemy has sent him on many errands and stuff. And Guccio went to go bring up the new queen. How do you pronounce her name? Clemence. He brought up Clemence from Hungary over to France. And after he did that, he went back to Marie, who was Marie Cressay, who is a young noble girl who he really wants to marry, and she loves him too. But he, being a banker, is a peasant who has a lot of money. She is a noble that doesn't have a lot of money. Seems like it'd be a match made in heaven, but her family is very snobby and does not like the Lombards, which is Guccio's family. So Guccio has to try to go and try to convince her family, but they're not for it. And there's a lot of stuff in this book of him trying to find a way to get around the family. And I was hooked. I was invested. I was like, please, Guccio, succeed. I need you to succeed. It's not the traditional romance like most authors write romance, but it's a romance that I was invested in as a guy. I was really invested in their relationship, and there's some great soaring, epic moments with their relationship, and I'm so happy for them. There's some sad moments, and I'm just like, I want to cry. I'm so sorry. And then there's some really just shocking moments with them. So I thought this was a great section for them. And I don't know what their story is going to be. He kind of spoiled it a little bit in this book where he said, over the course of the next 10 years. And I was like, no, I don't want to know that yet. But it was so excellently handled in this book. And then the second plot line in this book is about Clemence, the woman from Hungary, the princess from Hungary, who is marrying Louis X. She's a terrific character, She adds a new dynamic to the series, and I loved her plot line. Her plot line is about a truly pure of heart girl who is going to marry the king. And so she goes into it like she understands politics and power moves and stuff, and she understands she's not marrying for love. She's marrying because of its political alliance and because she'll get to be queen and all this stuff. But at the same time, she's the one person in this book who is everything she does is because she is pure of heart. At one point, someone in the family requests her to let someone out of jail, and she believes the person's innocent, and she argues to the king, and she makes King Louis better. King Louis was a bad king in the second book when he came to power. He's a bad king, and Clemence actually makes him a good king. Clemence is a terrific influence on the king. In fact, if you watch Game of Thrones, if you know how Marjorie kind of serves as an influence on Joffrey before they get married, because you know what happens to Joffrey, but before they get married, she makes him less bad of a king. She makes him a better king. He does stuff better, and that's very much the case in this book with Clemence making Louis a better king, which is also partially history. We know that he had a very, very short-lived reign, just I think like 2 years, but Louis got much better when Clemence was his wife. And so I really, really liked her stuff there. And she also, there's a moment where she confronts Louis over all these horrific things that he's done in his life. And she's able, and he does kind of do the traditional, yeah, well, you're my wife, you have to obey. But he does that a little, but he also starts to have a change of heart, and she legitimately makes him better. And I just loved having such a pure of heart woman representing Christianity as she should. She is a good woman, and I love Clemence in this book. And I know what happens, and it's a little tragic. But I loved that plot line as well. And it really deals with some really deep themes about marriage, about the purpose of family, the purpose of having a good spouse, not just marrying someone for money or marrying someone for power, but marrying someone who's actually going to be a good life partner. And I really enjoyed that theme that Maurice Druon explored there. But then there's a third story, which is a political intrigue story, and that was the whole Artois family. You have Robert of Artois, who is the young man who wants to take over the Artois estate and the county and the family power. And then you have his aunt, and I do not know how to pronounce her name. It's Mahat, M-A-H-A-U-T. Mahat, however, Mahat. I'll call her Mahat. His aunt is Mahat, and she just will not give up power, and especially not to Robert, who she despises. Yet they kind of in public have to be respectful. Oh, hello, auntie, good to see you. They have to be respectful, but at the same time they hate each other's guts and they want the other person dead. But they will respect each other in public because that's what they do. And their plot line was very standard political plot lines. It was the weakest plot line in the book. It was the weakest one, in quotes, but it's still such a good plot line. The weak plot lines in these books are better than some books' best plot lines. It's a great plot line, but that's the weakest one here. But it was very standard, par for the course. Kind of like the political plot line was the weakest part of The Strangled Queen too, but it was still a great book. But in this book, I really liked seeing how they're maneuvering themselves, how they're preparing the backstabbing nature. All that stuff was great. And then, an observation I had is every book I've mentioned how it kind of reminds me of Game of Thrones and how I feel like Game of Thrones was influenced. I talked about that in the first book with one of the characters. I talked about in the second book how some of the characters felt like Varys versus Littlefinger. They're kind of like jabs at each other that they do. In this book, you have in the kind of prologue, very, very, very short snippet of Queen Marie of Hungary, not Marie Crusade, but Queen Marie of Hungary. You get a snippet about her, and she's kind of referenced throughout the book. And then you have, of course, I mentioned earlier, Mahat Artois, the matriarch of the Artois family. And both of them feel like combined, they are the inspiration for the character of Olenna Tyrell in Game of Thrones. In Game of Thrones, Olenna is the matriarch of her family, kind of like Marie of Hungary and Artois, but also she is very cunning and conniving, and she is very politically astute. And both women in this book are very politically astute. They're making deals, they're making decisions for the family family. They're marrying off family members, particularly Marie of Hungary at the beginning. She's marrying off a family member for purely political reasons. I mean, also, he wants her daughter to get married, but also she knows that Louis is not the best guy, but she knows that her daughter, or not her daughter, is her granddaughter. She knows that it's granddaughter. She knows that Clemence will be queen, and that will be a power play for Clemence. So that's why she does it. So it's very Elena coded. And then I can't believe I said coded. That's such a modern day word. Anyway, but then you also have Mahat, who has kind of a tongue on her, not like using bad words, but kind of at like sniping at people. She's very blunt. She's willing to say what's on her mind. She is obviously a smart person who has plots and plans and stuff. And in this book, she is carrying them out. She is trying to stop Robert of Artois, and in some ways succeeding, and in some ways absolutely failing. And if you know Elena, sometimes she succeeds real hard, and boy does she fail so hard in Game of Thrones. So it just reminded me of that. And again, this series says the original Game of Thrones on the top of literally like every single book. And you might be forgiven if you thought, no, it's not. It's, he based it off of the War of the Roses, which in terms of plot, yes, it is. But in terms of character, in terms of the writing, in terms of inspiration, absolutely. George Martin got inspiration from this trilogy. Not trilogy, it's a 7-book series. I've read the first 3. And I plan to continue to read these books because, gosh darn, they are so good, and I will continue reading. So that is my review of The Poison Crown by Maurice Druon. If you've read this book, let me know your thoughts. Do you believe that my assessment of Mahat and Marie of Hungary is correct? What do you think about this? Did this make you more interested in history and historical fiction? And until next time, I'm Jonathan, and thank you for watching.